Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2007 thriller horror film, P2. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Steven for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, P2 is one of those films that I was a little familiar with. I think I saw it either on television or in a rental years ago, but I didn't really remember that much after all this time. So it obviously didn't leave that significant of an impression on me, good or bad. So when it comes to watching this film recently, it was as close as I could possibly get to watching it for the first time. And I liked it. I wouldn't say that I loved it, though. I think it could have been better. And I will detail why I feel that way pretty soon. But I can see why it has a bit of a cult following. But I can also see why there are other people who aren't that impressed with it. Because with this film, it definitely is one of those movies where I think your mileage with it might vary. I think some people can get past some of the derivative elements of it and some of the weaker aspects of the movie and still like it for what it is. But I can see other people not being able to move past that and just not being into it. Because it is one of those movies that it is fairly derivative in nature, and it also is another one of those films where it takes a decent amount of time to get going. So if the burn is way too slow for your tastes, I can see this being a bit dull for some audiences. It's directed by Franck Khalfoun, and this is his directorial debut, and I think he went on to do more impressive work, like the 2012 remake of Maniac, for instance. But I still think that this has some good direction, especially for a relative low-budget production. And there's some ambitious, pretty technically terrific shots in this, in terms of some of the establishing shots of the parking garage, or some of the scenes where he's utilizing various different angles and ways to move the camera throughout the frame, and just how he works with the environment of the parking structure. I think for a film that takes place for the most part in one location, it's pretty easy to direct a movie like that and have it look very flat and have it not have a lot of variety. And I feel that Frank really provided a lot of variety when it comes to the filmmaking. It wasn't something that was just very tedious and tired looking, because it's just the same shots of the same different parts of the parking structure. No, he actually provided a nice change of pace when needed, or a nice change of framing, or visuals. So it wasn't one of those things where the film got visually stale. And I think that that's something that easily could happen considering the setting of the movie. And I feel he also got some pretty solid performances from his cast, especially the lead actress. And it's one of those movies where visually it I think it packs a punch. I think it looks great. I think it's got a great style to it. I think it looks very slick, and I think the direction is a big reason why this film works, honestly, in any capacity, because it's just so well directed. So I think he's done better work. I think he improved upon what he did here in Maniac, which I think is his peak, to be honest, as a director, because I think he's kind of fallen off since then, in all honesty, if you look at his filmography. But this was still a pretty technically competent and really solid directorial debut. And I can see why Aja and other people felt that this guy might have had what it takes, because you could definitely see it on camera. You could definitely see it in the film itself. The screenplay by Alexandre Aja, Franck Khalfoun, and Gregory Levasseur, on the other hand, it's not entirely bad, but it is one of those screenplays to me that runs out of steam. It starts off really strong, and it's got a good build up, but then as it goes on, it just takes too many bad swerves and too many uh weird turns, and so it just ultimately isn't a story and a script that is as good as it could be. And it's not because of its simple plot. I actually like that about it. I like the fact that it's a pretty simple, straightforward plot about this young woman named Angela who works as, I believe, like a secretary at this company, and she's trying to go home for the holidays, for Christmas Eve, to be with her family. But she keeps running into a lot of issues. First off, she has to stay a little bit later than she intended to at work. Then she's trying to go home, and as soon as she gets into her car and turns the key in the ignition, the car won't start. So then she gets the help of the security guard, who's named Thomas, who seems like he's a nice guy at first glance, but of course you find out that he's anything but. And I'll give the script a pass for her trusting this guy, because she's been working here for many years. She's probably run into this guy before, and he hasn't done anything, so she probably doesn't have any reason to assume that this guy is a psycho who wants to kidnap her. But the car won't start. She then trusts him to help her even further. But she does the smart thing and is like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to call a cab. And she can't get out the door to get to the cab because the door is locked. The door to the front door. The door to the front door. Oh yeah, the front door is locked to the business. So then she has to wind up going back to the parking structure, which is P2, which is the name of the film. And that's where the majority of the movie takes place, is in this one parking garage in P2. But it also takes place throughout other parts of the garage as well, and other parts of the building. And then it just becomes a survival horror film, where it's Angela trying to survive the advances and the attacks of this crazy security guard named Tom. And it starts off really strong and with some very effective chilling scenes where she gets drugged and knocked out by Tom, and then is chained and handcuffed to a chair, dressed to the nines now. Like, now she's dressed in a white party dress and got makeup on, and she's there as a dinner guest for Tom. And the dinner scene, I think, is honestly the most creepy scene in the entire movie. That's the most horrifying scene in the film to me, because this is where you are first starting to really see Tom as the psycho that he is, and it's rather unsettling. And I mean, just the whole idea of having to call your family while this crazy psycho has his hands around your throat, and you have to act like everything is okay. Like, that's some pretty strong stuff. But once it just becomes another film where she's trying to stay one step ahead of the crazy psycho, it starts to dip in terms of the quality and effectiveness and becomes a bit too cliched. And there are some moments too where they just don't make any sense to me. So it does a pretty good job. Honestly, even after that moment where you have the tense scene at the dinner table, she does ultimately escape. But that's after you get the whole viscerally intense scene with this one coworker of hers who was also kidnapped and held captive by Tom in another parking structure because of the fact that Tom feels like he's doing Angela a favor because he saw this guy assault Angela in an elevator earlier. So Tom, because he's this absolute nut job, he thinks that, oh, I've tied this guy up for you, and I've set everything up so that you can get revenge on him. You can take him out. You can show him that he shouldn't touch you and he shouldn't assault you like that. In a lot of ways, Tom really is the precursor to the nice guy or the incel. He really is like it's honestly kind of eerie if you think about it, because you would see this very type of personality be more prevalent in society, or at least when it comes to more well known in society. Like this type of personality was always there, but it's it's interesting to see the nice guy and the male incel essentially be the psycho in this film. And he thinks he's the nice guy. He's doing the right thing. Kidnapped this guy, tied him up, has him all ready to go so Angela can kick his ass and teach him a lesson. And Angela's like, no, no, not at all. I don't want to do this. And because, Tom is crazy, he snaps and then beats the crap out of this poor guy with a flashlight and then runs him over. I wouldn't say runs him over. He rams into him repeatedly with the car while he's up against the wall. And it leads to a genuinely visceral, intense, violent, gory sequence. That's when Angela escapes and she's running away from Tom and trying to stay one step ahead of him. And there's another solid, well put together sequence where she's in an elevator trying to get help, or the scene earlier where she's trying to use her phone to call 911. And this is back in the day when cell phone service wasn't as reliable as it is now, so she had to like stick her handcuffed hands through the locked gate just to get the signal, and then drops the phone. And there's this really intense scene where she's trying to get the phone while Tom is pretty much on his way, and she breaks a fingernail and she has to like pull it off. And that was a moment that made me go, ooh. And just like the scene earlier where the other coworker gets hit repeatedly with the car and his guts are spilling out. And so you'd think, like, with this setup that I'm talking about, like, this is a gem, right? It starts off that way. It really does. And it continues with this elevator scene where Angela's in this elevator hiding from Tom. She thinks she's talking to this guy on the other end on this intercom, but it's actually Tom pretending to be somebody else. So he's just fucking with her. And he continues to mess with her by filling up the elevator with water. He takes the fire hose and turns it on and just turns the elevator into a watery coffin, essentially. And Angela is now having to try to find a way to get the elevator open and get to a different level because she stopped the elevator in the middle. So she can't just open the doors now because there's nowhere to go but down. So she's got to figure out a way to get it to work while it's malfunctioning, and gets it just right, and then gets out on this different level, which is P3. That's also where you find out what happened to the guy who runs the front desk. He got taken out because Tom throws his body into the elevator. And so this is a pretty intense, pretty suspenseful, pretty thrilling sequence. And she then is on the run again, and she finds an axe, and she has the right idea of smashing all the security cameras in the parking garage. And I'm like, okay, all right. She's going to start playing mind games with this guy. She's going to take out the security cameras, and she's going to use that to her advantage, and she's going to make him think that, everything's fine, but she's actually waiting to pounce on this guy. But no, instead she decides to be way too impulsive and stupid, and just goes and tries to take him out right then and there while he's singing along to a Christmas song by Elvis. Blue Christmas, I believe. So he's singing along to Blue Christmas, and she's going to take him out. But even the plan that she has here is just badly botched by her. Like, I think it would have been better to mess with his head and, play a game of cat and mouse with him. Wait till it gets really impatient and goes out searching for her, and she's keeping an eye on where he is, because the cameras are gone, so he can't use the cameras to see where she is now. And so, she'll hide in the shadows and maybe wait for a moment where he's vulnerable, he's got his back turned, then try to go after him. But instead, she does this impulsive thing, goes to his office, and she's going to take him out there, but she does it in a way that's way too tentative. So she's like slowly walking up and, sliding around, waits till the song is over. And by the time she gets in there, he's long gone. And he's had enough time to set up the videotape of her being assaulted by him when she was unconscious. And so all you get to see with her with the axe, which is on the poster, is her smashing the TV. Because after that, she winds up getting the axe taken away from her from the guy. Because she waited way too long and didn't plan that thing. Didn't plan what she was going to do with that axe properly. Also, I don't know why she didn't try to use the axe to break her handcuffs off either. Like, I don't know, prop up the axe somewhere in the parking garage and break the handcuffs. At least break the chains. You can do that with an axe. I've seen that happen before in other films and in other movies. It's kind of dangerous and you could cut yourself, but it's worth the shot, because otherwise you're just running around being handicapped because you're handcuffed. But she doesn't even think about doing that. She just sticks with the handcuffs on. So then whenever she tries to swing the axe, she's at a disadvantage. But even then, it's like, okay, if you're going to sneak up on this guy, don't wait till the song is over. Go up to him. Be fast. Be quick. He's in the middle of his Elvis performance. He's completely out of it. He's dancing with the teddy bear. As soon as sneak up on him, quick, pounce on him with that axe. But no, she doesn't do that. So then she gets caught again and gets tased, and the writer seems to think that you can get knocked out with a taser. That's not how tasers work. But okay, I can give that a pass. But what I won't give a pass is the whole scene with the police. These are some of the crappiest and some of the dumbest cops ever. So the cops eventually do arrive at the parking garage, because her call for help actually did work earlier. And the cops, just for whatever reason, just trust this security guard guy. They just think that he's not suspicious at all. And I mean, I would think that if there was a call from a woman saying she was kidnapped at this location, I wouldn't just trust the security guard just because he's a security guard. You don't even know if he actually is the real security guard. He could be somebody else. He could be the kidnapper, acting like he's the security guard, or the security guard himself could be the kidnapper. I don't understand. These cops suck. And so they just don't think that he's a suspect right away, which they should have. It's a potential kidnapping. It should have been like, sir, we're going to have to hold you for a little bit because we need to figure out what's going on here. There's this woman who's saying that she's being kidnapped. So we're gonna have to we're gonna have you stay in your office while we do a search. No, instead they bring him along with them briefly. Then he gets out, and this whole time Angela is in the trunk of a car in the parking garage, and she's trying to get out so she can alert the police. And you have this whole scene where it seems like there's a cop who's going to see the dead body of the businessman who was smashed to bits by Tom in his car earlier, because all that Tom did was just put up a pallet over the body. Like that was not suspicious at all. A fucking random pallet in the middle of a parking structure. And the cop is there, and he's looking right at it, and even looks at the camera, and he doesn't even take the pallet off. I'm like, these cops are crap. Like, what kind of cop would do that? Like, you already have a suspicion of a kidnapping, and there's a suspicious looking pallet. Like, wouldn't you look behind the pallet to see if maybe the woman who was kidnapped might be hidden behind there? Like, why would you just be like, oh, yep, that's fine. Random pallet in the middle of a parking garage. I'll just leave it. And then what makes it even dumber is that there's a whole scene where the cops are standing outside the gate to the parking structure. And it's established that Angela's phone is right there because she dropped her phone. And she wasn't able to get it when her fingernail broke off. So her phone is right there. There was a cop who's literally standing there right next to her phone. And he doesn't look down once and see the phone there? No, instead they just buy the security guard's bullshit story. They drive around a little bit, don't see anything. They are on their way out. Angela just gets out of the trunk at that time and is screaming for help, but it's already too late because the cops are gone, and they run right over her phone. And I'm like, how did they not see that phone there? If they were literally standing there with the phone, they literally could have stood on top of the phone themselves. We're like, oh shit, what is this? Is this your phone? It's like, no, this is that woman's phone, isn't it? And then you could have the scene where, you know, Tom takes him out with the axe. Like, you have this whole thing where Tom has the axe ready to go in case the cops figure out what's going on, but they never do. So it's like, that's another instance where the axe is used for nothing. Like, the axe was completely useless, and that was all over the marketing. It was never used once for anything that was of any substance other than the scene where Angela smashes the TV with it because she's distraught over seeing the tape of her being assaulted by Tom. And then you get to the finale where I understand where they're coming from, where she commandeers a car and they get into this game of chicken, but the way that it's written is just off to me. Because, or even before that, where she has a tire iron that she used to get out of the trunk. And so now the cops have left. Tom is sitting there with his dog, and she's got a tire iron at this point. And this is where Tom lets the dog loose, and the dog chases after her and tries to attack her in another car, and she kills it with the tire iron. I'm like, I don't know. At that point, I'm desperate. I'm gonna fucking pounce on him at that moment and that dog. I don't care if that dog bites my arm. I'm gonna hit that dog repeatedly in the head, and then I'm gonna hit that motherfucker. I'm gonna hit Tom in the head repeatedly. Like, desperate times call for desperate measures. But instead, she's like, oh no, I'm not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna run while the dog chases me, and then break into a car, and then the dog goes after me, and then I'll kill with a tire iron. I'm like, okay, all right. And then you get to the scene that is honestly is basically the climax of the movie, where she commandeers a rental car and gets in this game of chicken with Tom, and she wins, but then soon after she crashes her car. And I'm like, so you set it up where she has a moment of triumph, only for her immediately to crash the car. I'm like, why? I know it was established she was having a hard time driving the car earlier, smashing into things, probably because she's still handcuffed. But I just think that was just off in terms of the way that it was set up, in terms of the script, because you have this moment of triumph, she's cheering, she's like, yeah, fuck you, yeah, and then crashes the car. It's like, did you even need the car scene at that point? There were moments like after the elevator scene, it really did feel like the film was just padding things out too much, and it wasn't really as effective in terms of the suspense. Either you have the stuff with the cops, which is just dumb and was just poorly written, or then you have some of the other things that I was mentioning. And then, admittedly, I do like the way that she takes out Tom. She stabs him in the eye and handcuffs him to the car. And I get why the car crashed, because it's there so that there's a reason that the gasoline is leaking. But couldn't it have just been his car? Why did she have to crash the car at that point? Maybe maybe something happens where, okay, she wins the game of chicken, but then she realizes that she can't go anywhere with the car right now because the door is locked, so she's basically just driving around in circles. So, as soon as he crashes his car, he set it up where, it's a game of chicken, and he crashes his car, and it's his car that he's tied to. And I think that's ultimately what happens. His car is the one that he's tied to, I think. No, I think it's her car. But I'm just like, why isn't it just Tom's car? Just have him handcuffed to his car, and it's him and his car that blows up. Why does it have to be the car that she stole? You could have done that same thing, but without undermining the whole moment where she wins the game of chicken. But I do like the thing where she stabs him in the eye, handcuffs him to the car. He calls her a C word, and then she takes the taser and lights the gasoline on fire and blows him up. I like that. That's a very satisfying way to take out this psycho. And then I like the end shot of her walking out in the cold and with the snow falling down and just a total mess. And I like how it's set up where she breaks her handcuffs around the same time too, gets out of the parking garage. So the screenplay, it has a fair amount of hits, but it also has some misses. And I think those misses is why the film itself, to me, isn't great. And definitely why the screenplay isn't as solid or as spectacular as it could have been. Another reason for why I think the film isn't as good as it had potential to be is because of one particular cast member. Now, it's not Rachel Nichols. I think Rachel Nichols was fantastic. I thought she did an amazing job playing Angela. That was a really great performance. A lot of layers to it, a lot of nuance. She was believable when she needed to be when it comes to being fearful and being distraught, but also when it comes to being confident and being a bit of a badass. Like, I thought it was a really good performance, and I thought it was one of the more overlooked final girl performances that I can think of. I thought she was really special on this. She's a big reason why I like the film, is because of Rachel Nichols. And it's really too bad, like, she didn't really do I mean, she still got work after this, but it really wasn't a role that catapulted her into major film roles afterwards. And I think that's too bad because she showed a lot of range with this performance, enough that she should have gotten more opportunities. Wes Bentley, on the other hand, he started off strong, but then as the film went on, his performance just evolved into just absolute ludicrousness. I thought it was laughable, his attempts at being a lunatic. It was very forced, very hammy, and I didn't buy it. I didn't buy him as being intimidating either when he was yelling really loudly, and it was just a really disappointing performance. And that's important because that's your villain. That's your foe. That's the guy who is carrying the other half of the movie, essentially. And he did fine early on in the dinner scene, and when he's being suave and charismatic and seemed like a nice guy, but when more and more of his psychosis is revealed, the performance just gets worse and worse. And I think it's because Wes Bentley is a limited actor, and I also feel that Wes Bentley didn't have his priorities straight. And he'll even admit it because he took this role because it enabled him to have enough time and enough money to be able to do as much drugs as he possibly could. Because this was in the middle of a phase of his life where he was completely addicted to drugs. And so when you watch this film, you can kind of see that in his performance. You can see a guy who shows talent, but is wildly off the mark and inconsistent because he's probably high. He's probably high for half the filming. I think that should have went with Jake Gyllenhaal. I know Jake Gyllenhaal was kind of a younger actor at this point, but he had already done something like Donnie Darko, and he had already really started to show that he had some serious acting chops. You would see that Jake Gyllenhaal would absolutely nail characters like this later on in films like Nightcrawler and so on. So I feel they should have went with Jake Gyllenhaal for Tom, and I think the film would have been a lot better. I think it might have even gotten better critical acclaim because I think there were a lot of critics who picked up on what I did with Wes Bentley's performance. So if you had Jake Gyllenhaal, like, he can pull off the charismatic bit. He can pull off the guy who you think is just there to help you out and enable you to go on your way. But he can also play the guy who's completely unhinged and do it in a way that is actually chilling and not laughable. And yeah, I feel that was a big miss. That was a pretty big whiff when it comes to this movie, is Wes Bentley as Thomas. The rest of the cast, like, there's really not much to say. I mean, they don't really have that much screen time. Like, Simon Reynolds is Jim, Philip Arkin is Carl, Stephanie Moore is Lorraine. There's other people who play like the cops. But it's really a two-person film. It's a two-actor movie with Rachel Nichols and Wes Bentley. And Rachel does every possible thing she can to carry this film as far as she can possibly take it. But Wes Bentley just isn't on the same level as she is. The cinematography by Maxime Alexandre I thought was pretty excellent. I thought it looked really good for a film that took place in such a limited setting. The editing by Patrick McMahon I also felt was pretty solid, pretty strong, pretty good stuff, especially added to the tension in a fair amount of scenes. Really did help provide some taut moments of intensity. The music by Tom and Dandy I also liked. Was a good, eerie, atmospheric score that definitely did add some extra quality to the film. So did the usage of the Christmas songs and so on. Although, to be honest, the Christmas themes were just very... take it or leave it for me. Like, this didn't necessarily have to be a Christmas movie by any means. It could have just taken place anytime. And I think it's paced fine, but I do feel that it starts to drag after the first like hour and 10 minutes or so. Like, I feel that it really just tails off and doesn't really have the same intensity or the same thrills as it did up until that point. But anyway, that's my thoughts on P2. It's a film that at the end of the day, I would still recommend if you're a fan of these kind of films, these kind of thrillers. And I got nothing else to say except, as usual, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.